All right, I think I'm back. I'm not really sure why the stream uh, just kind of crept out there, but um, yeah, I don't know. I've been having a lot of issues with YouTube recently, so didn't have these issues a few months ago, and now all of a sudden it seems like I'm just having like daily issues getting the streams to work. So we'll just try again and see if it goes. If it doesn't, call it a day. So basically, I'm just going to continue where I left off from the last live stream. So if you missed it, I guess I just lost connection, and I'll just jump back in. So in the last live stream, I was just discussing, what has Bitcoin done during prior elections? Okay, what has it done during prior elections? In 2016, it moved up in the month before the election, and then it more or less moved sideways throughout November. Um, and then after November, it then went parabolic, and then we had a blow off top, around the the end of December, beginning of January, sometime in that time period. So uh, we were basically just looking at, okay, well, what was Bitcoin doing during the back in 2012 when we had the election, and you can see that in October the price retraced 15%, and then in November it actually went up by about 25%. So a completely different scenario here, because in this one it went down in October and up in November. But in the last cycle, so in 2016, the last election, it went up in October and more or less sideways in November. So there's not a ton of evidence just looking at the raw Bitcoin data that the election would necessarily have a significant impact on the price of Bitcoin. However, you could argue that, back in 2012, people didn't really know about Bitcoin. Even in 2016, it was becoming more known, but still, I feel like the vast majority of people have had maybe heard of it, um, but weren't necessarily, they weren't necessarily, had any idea how to use it. And you could argue that that's, still the same today. So let me know if you guys can hear me. By the way, give the video a thumbs up if you guys like it. I'm not really sure why the stream is constantly getting disconnected. I'm not sure if it's me or if it's if there's something going on where for whatever reason it seems like my streams aren't really getting through as well as they used to. So so yeah, I mean, so generally speaking, just looking at the raw data, there hasn't been a huge influence on that. Now, the next thing I wanna talk about is the actually I think I still have it up. So I want to talk about this, and it basically what I'm looking at. What I'm just going to show is just these are not my charts. Basically, I got them from different sources. You can see this one is from Strategic Research Partners, but it just generally shows you what historically has happened in the stock market leading into the election, right after the election, and then 6 months to a year after the election. So what happened during that time period? I was going to make all these charts myself. I was starting to work on them tonight. Actually, I was going to make a lot of different charts, but unlike crypto, a lot of people already have done this type of research in stock markets, and so I was like, there's no point for me to really reinvent the wheel here and spend hours making charts when I can just pull them up, because I'm sure other people have done these charts before. So, but we can at least pull them up and take a look. The reason we're doing this um, is because uh, up until a few weeks ago, Bitcoin was actually, you know, pretty much correlated to the S&P. Now, I made a video on the S&P a long time ago, and in reference to Bitcoin bear markets, to look at the correlation coefficient between, say, Bitcoin bear markets and the S&P. It turns out one of the Bitcoin bear markets was negatively correlated, one was positively correlated, and one really had no correlation at all. So you could not really make the argument that Bitcoin was going through a bear market because the S&P was doing poorly. Bitcoin was going through a bear market because it had just gone up like, several thousand percent, and was just going through a natural, correction phase, a bubble popping phase. Um, However, this year, up until a few weeks ago, there was a pretty undeniable correlation between Bitcoin and the S&P. It seemed like when Bitcoin would, when the S&P would either go up or down, Bitcoin would track it. If the futures, if Dow futures were down, then Bitcoin would react. If Dow futures were up, then Bitcoin would react to that. So it just kind of, it seemed like for the most part they were somewhat tracking. However, over the last month or so, the traditional markets have actually gone down a little bit, whereas Bitcoin, as we know, has rallied significantly over the last month or so. We've seen it go up like 30 to 40% in the last month. So you could argue that Bitcoin, at least in the short term, there was at least a small level of decoupling with stocks. Okay, so this chart just kind of shows a few different things. It shows what before the election, right after the election, and then later on in the election. Okay, so the first thing we can look at is, okay, well, what happened? So one of the ideas that people try to use, right, is they say, okay, well, what if we look at the stock market? Is the stock market a really good indicator of picking the president? And there are some, a lot of times, depending on what metric you look at, there is the stock market has a pretty good track record of predicting which party will either, if they'll stay in office, if the incumbent will stay in office, or if the incumbent will lose. Okay, this year is generally completely different, however, to some degree because of the pandemic, right? It's completely changed any track that we were on. For instance, you can see that 6 months prior to the election, if we had seen 6 months prior to the election, this is a 6%, so a 6% gain basically on markets 6 months prior. So over the preceding 6 months, I suppose. And if you look at the last 6 months, because April or March, around that time period was when traditional markets dumped. So if you measure it back from say April, I think, and you guys can correct my math or check my math on this, but I think the stock market is up like 12% or so since that time period. But it's also somewhat skewed because it had just dumped by like 30% in a few weeks. So it's really hard to use some of these metrics in the same way that you might ordinarily would. If you look at 3 months ago, I think it's about a 1% gain over the last 3 months. And if you look at the last month, it's and we don't even have, we still have a day or two before the election, so we can't be 100% sure what it's going to be. At least with 6 months and 3 months, it's not going to make as big of a difference. But 1 month prior to the election, I think we're right below break even. Okay, so you can see those general trends and kind of where we are. Now, the key thing I think it's important to look at here is averaged over elections from 1936. And by the way, I'm going to make a standalone video on this for people not watching the live stream. I just wanted to talk about it because because the election is coming up, and I want people to kind of recognize go in with the right mindset. So one thing to consider is that no matter whether the incumbent won or the incumbent lost, so either scenario, okay, the day after the election, there tended to be a drop. The week after, a drop, and 1 month after, a drop. In fact, the only time there was not a drop 1 month after the election was when the incumbent party lost. At least, sorry, I shouldn't say the only time. This is an average. This is the average price performance. I'm sure there are some times where that's not true. This is just looking at the average. And by the way, I'm sure the uncertainty on this is sky high. I doubt it's that statistically significant. Now, if you look at further out though, so in the short term, so you can see if the incumbent party won in the short term, on average, the day after the election, it looks like the market dropped by approximately, maybe a little less than 1%. And if the incumbent party lost, slightly less than that, but not a huge difference. 1 week, they're both about the same. 1 month, it was higher, if the incumbent party won, there was generally a larger drop. But as you get, say, 6 months out and a year out, so 6 months out, it had the incumbent party won, on average, the market was doing better. You can see, I don't have it exactly tracked, but maybe 2.5% as opposed to 2%. And 1 year out had the incumbent party won, averaged over all elections, presidential elections since 1936, the market was up about 5 or 6% with the incumbent party winning, and with the incumbent party losing, it was up maybe 2 or 3%. So you can kind of see the differences. It generally, going into the election, we trend down. During the election, or right after the election, there is a period where the market does tend to be a little bit more down, and then after the election, things pick back up. And this is why I've always said, right, yes, elections can affect markets. They tend to dip around election time. This is no secret. I'm sure half the world knows this, right? This is not a secret. Around election time, markets tend to dip. However, they can recover rather quickly, and so they dip because markets, when you talk about change, markets generally aren't a fan of change, and so when there's a lot of uncertainty in the air too, a lot of people get spooked and might put their money on the sidelines. So it makes sense that right after an election, people are kind of wondering, okay, well, what are the ramifications of this election? Therefore, let me just, it tends to dip within that first month. Okay, so generally speaking, if we had looked at this a month ago and we had said, okay, well, it seems like Bitcoin tends to follow traditional markets. It also seems that traditional markets dip following an election. Therefore, we might also expect Bitcoin to dip. However, Bitcoin, at least in the short term over the last month, seems to have decoupled from traditional markets to some degree. So even using this argument necessarily isn't that valid. Now, here's another chart, and this one is by BlackRock. This one shows the calendar year performance during presidential election years from 1928 to 2019. So when the new president is elected, okay, so during presidential election years, the market, so stocks, tend to be up 9.3% compared to bonds 6.7%. During all presidential election years, you can see it's 11.3%, and when the incumbent president wins, it tends to be up 13.4% compared to 4.2% for bonds. Okay, so you can see, generally speaking, there is a lot of volatility. However, things like, while there is a dip in around election time, like in November, things still do tend to end the year on a positive note. If you look, and this chart is by Dimensional Fund Advisors, if you look at all presidents, basically going back to 1926, you can see that, generally speaking, for the most part, we've trended upwards, right? Whether it was a Republican president or a Democratic president, right? I mean, you can see, Hoover, maybe not so much, but Roosevelt, it generally trended upward. Then Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Johnson, Nixon, maybe not so much. Ford, Carter, Reagan, this period, it moved up significantly. Clinton moved up a lot. Bush, this was, around the time of the financial crisis, so we know where this dip was coming from. Obama, it trended up. And this chart is slightly out of date. With Trump, it has also been trending upwards up until the pandemic, and even then it's actually come back to go past where the highs were earlier in the year, a couple months ago. So it actually did make it past that a couple months ago. And by the way, back in March, when we were talking about this and people were calling for this like major depression, we said on the channel, right, it's sensational stuff. There's, let's just stick to the risk levels. The risk on the S&P, according to the risk metric I made, reached 0.3, and it hardly ever reaches that level. Therefore, it was signaling a great buying opportunity. And so if we continue on, this just gives you a snapshot of the annual stock market returns during all election years. I'm not going to really talk too much about it, but you can see, for the most part, there's a lot of positive returns. There were a few negative returns in 1932, 1940, 2000, and 2008. And obviously this was because of the financial crisis, which many of us would have lived through. And then there's one other chart I wanted to show before we get back to just more looking at crypto, is how have stocks performed. This chart is by RBC Capital Markets. How did stocks perform under 6 various scenarios? So one of them was, sorry, I'm just looking at the chart. So one of them was a Republican sweep. So this is the average annual return in the S&P 500 when different parties are in power. So if it's a Republican sweep, it's 13%. If it's a Republican with a split Congress, meaning, maybe the Democrats control the House, the Republicans control the Senate or something like that, so a split Congress, it's 6%. And if it's a Republican president with a fully Democratic Congress, it was the worst at 5%. Okay, now on the other hand, so a Republican sweep is 13%, a Democratic sweep on average is 9%. Interestingly enough, though, Democratic presidents with a split Congress, it's 14%. So this could be like an example of a Democratic president where the Republicans either hold the House or the Senate, and then Democratic president with a fully Republican Congress, 13%. So the three, historically speaking, stocks performed best under these three scenarios. So either a Republican sweep, or a Democratic president with a split Congress, or a Democratic president with a Republican Congress. So I thought it was just interesting to note, and also noting that Republican presidents with split Congresses or Democratic Congresses tended to yield lower returns, as well as a full Democratic sweep tended to yield lower returns than the other three that gave us either a 13% or a 14% on average. So I hope that was interesting. I know this is kind of moving a little bit away from what I normally talk about on the channel, but hopefully that was at least interesting to some people. So looking back now, right? I mean, we're looking back over where we currently are. If traditional markets dip back down, which a lot of times they do during election, during times of the election, if you look at the VIX, which measures the volatility of the S&P, so if we go back to 2016, so if we go back to 2016 during October, so this is September, October. So here's, this is the general region of so October, or sorry, this is 2017. 2016 is right here. So here's October of 2016, and then going into November of 2016. So this was right around election time. You can see that the VIX did, in the short term, it did kind of pop up. So it came all the way down from 11 up to about double. So it essentially doubled during that time period, which was around election time. Okay, this was right around election time. If we have the same repeat, which it looks like we are having some volatility here, you can see that, I mean, it's been a crazy year with the pandemic, right? Volatility has been a lot higher than it normally is, but it started off the end of October at 28, and it's recently been moving up this week. It's already up to 38. If we continue, if we do something like we did last year, then we would expect in the short term for there to be, a decent level of volatility in traditional markets. And if Bitcoin reacts to that like it has for the majority of the year, then we might expect to see Bitcoin be volatile as well. However, if it continues ignoring markets like it has the last month, then there's nothing to say that it can't just do what it's done in the past, right? And largely ignore the election. Because in 2016, it did move sideways during November for the most part, but generally speaking, it was still just moving up. And whatever happened in here is just a blip, right? It would be nothing to look back on during a market cycle and say, oh, that had a huge impact, because it really didn't have a huge impact. And even in 2016, or in 2012, it also didn't really have a huge impact. It bled in October, but then in November, early November and continuing on, the price was just trending upwards. So you could argue that up until now, elections have not really influenced the price of Bitcoin that much. Now, with that said, again, I mean, you also have to take into account where we are. You could, you could easily argue, right? If Bitcoin were to retrace back down, a lot of people are going to say, oh, it makes sense for it to retrace back down because it's kind of overloaded. And I would agree, right? I mean, I would agree. As I said before, I would prefer to see Bitcoin cool off for a little bit, because if it doesn't, it means what it generally means, right, is it goes into a bubble and then people get too excited and then they ultimately get wrecked because they're not prepared for whatever retracement comes, right? I think there's a good chance Bitcoin's going to go to 100K this market cycle, I just don't think it's going to happen next week or in 5 months or even a year. I think it's going to take longer. Therefore, I think it'd be better for Bitcoin to make these slower moves up, right, rather than like an immediate parabolic move, because those immediate moves are not sustainable in the short term. So, if we go over to the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio, which is something we've talked about a lot, right? I mean, you can see where we currently are. I've often said I think we're going to spend a decent amount of time in between around 0.042 to 0.028. So in this general area, right? We've been saying that for a long time, and I still contend it. I still think that we're going to spend a lot of time in this regime of the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio this market cycle. I don't think we're just going to pop initially above it and then never revisit it again. Okay, it's possible we go below it, right? I mean, it's always possible we dip below it and then come back into it. But actually, in the short term, if we zoom in, you can see that we actually came right down to the bottom of it, and we've rebounded in the short term, so around 0.028 or so. Okay, so just look out for this, because if you follow the channel, you also know that we talk about, historically speaking, right, Ethereum has been a good buy against Bitcoin in December of the year. So if you're new, right, if you just look at the moves of Ethereum against Bitcoin, buying Ethereum in December with Bitcoin has historically worked out really well, seeing moves upward of 1,800%. Sometimes just like 50 or 60% or so. But in general, you can see that there's been a lot of great moves of Ethereum against Bitcoin during December. Now, does that mean that this December it has to repeat? No, it doesn't. One of the things we've noted, right, is that in the fourth quarter of the year, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio trends down. And we've seen that time and time again. Going into that fourth quarter, it does tend to trend downwards, and this is business as usual, right? I mean, this is the same thing. And during this cycle as well, or this year, I should say, we also have been trending down in the fourth quarter of the year. So the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio has continued to trend down. Now, does that mean that you're going to get the most bang for your buck in December? No, it doesn't, right? There's a chance that you won't. I mean, here's a great example, right? I mean, if you had bought Ethereum back in September of 2019, you could have gotten it for a slightly better deal than in December. But generally speaking, the idea is that if the setup is there, then it's there, and that doesn't mean that it's going to be at its lowest point. I mean, there's always a chance that the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio rebounds, comes here, and it gets to be December, and you're like, well, you know what? This still seems to be a pretty good regime, right? Because if we continue this general uptrend, right? I mean, it could still be a good short term, or it could yield a potentially good 90-day ROI. So that's why I've said, right, I don't try to time bottoms perfectly, right? I'm not stipulating by any means that the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio necessarily has to bleed for the next few weeks, right? I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, if it did do this, then I think this trade would even be a better potential move. But in general, what I do, right, is I just try to time these momentum shifts and convert, right, or buy at different levels. And if you're one of those, if you're someone who doesn't like to trade because of tax purposes or whatever it is, remember, you don't have to trade. I mean, if you're focusing on weekly DCAs or monthly DCAs, you could just choose to focus on buying a specific crypto during a specific time to reweight your portfolio rather than making any like taxable trades. Okay, so that's one way you could potentially do it if you want to avoid having to make trades. And by the way, I don't generally talk about taxes because, of course, it depends on where you are. There are some places where you can make crypto to crypto trades and you're fine. You don't have to pay taxes on it. There's a lot of other places where you do. So it all depends on where you live. It also depends on how long you've been holding the cryptocurrency and then what the tax rate is. But just recognize that this, as we've been discussing for over a year now, I mean, we discussed it back in 2019. back in December. I made several videos saying Ethereum Bitcoin is very undervalued right now, and we would expect, if history is any indication, a decent move against Bitcoin in the first quarter of the year. We saw that. So right, it went up 60%. It did come back down, but we essentially started this new trend, and now yet again in the fourth quarter of the year, it has been trending down and might be giving us yet another opportunity. Okay, if we look at Link, if you look at the Link Bitcoin valuation, as I've said every time I talk about Link, right? Is this not a trend you want to be a part of? This is a trend I want to be a part of. This is I think the moving average that's being shown right here. This is the 20-week moving average of the Link Bitcoin ratio. One of the interesting things, right, is we don't tend to dip that far below it, right? So here you can see these various dips. If we take measured moves of the Link Bitcoin valuation to see how far down below it has come, that one was actually pretty significant at -50. This one was -22, -19. By the way, this one was back in 2018. So this was back during the bear market. This one was, maybe about a 5 or 6% drop below it. This one stopped right at the 20-week. This one stopped right at the 20-week. Right now, we're approximately, maybe 10 to 12% below the 20-week. So generally speaking, the Link Bitcoin valuation has come back down a lot, and I can't begin to tell you how far down it's going to go. A lot of that depends on Bitcoin, right? So we're essentially, a lot of altcoins are at a crossroads right now, because a lot of them are just waiting to see what the hell Bitcoin's going to do. And you could argue that Bitcoin is trying to figure out what it's going to do, because with the election looming, the fact that it has tracked traditional markets for most of the year, at least except for maybe the beginning, or at least maybe except for October, there's a little bit of uncertainty in the air with Bitcoin. And because we know that traditional markets tend to dip in November, or at least there's also a lot of volatility, it could make its way to the cryptocurrency markets. One reason to be slightly concerned, right, is, Bitcoin has already rallied fairly significantly in the short term, right? It's up 30% or so since the beginning of October. It essentially rallied 30% in 1 month. So maybe I shouldn't say it's a cause for concern. It's just a call to say manage your expectations, right? There's nothing to say that it can't continue to rally. As we've seen prior elections, it more or less passed through them without a second thought, right? It didn't say, oh, so and so got elected, therefore I need to crash 50%. It didn't do anything like that. It was basically just a blip on the price chart. However, given the fact that we are at 14K, we recognize that 14K is probably going to be a generally, a decent area that might be hard to break through. There's a good chance that this will be a region where we spend a lot of time, kind of like 10K was. One reason this one I think is important as well is if you look at the monthly chart. The monthly chart's pretty interesting, because you can see that the monthly candles of December 2017 and January of 2018, they peaked at 14K, and you can see we just hit another candle that peaked at 14K. So that's essentially right where we are. We just started a new candle that has dipped down a little bit, but it's only been a few hours. You can't really make any conclusions there yet. So 14K, there's a good chance it will be a level that could hold for a while. But at the end of the day, right, levels of support and resistance are somewhat, right? Like 6K, as I said before, 6K was a huge area of quote unquote resistance that a lot of people thought was going to take a long time. And if you look at what happened, right, it blasted through 6K like it wasn't even there. It said it said what resistance, right? This was that general area, and it didn't even really hesitate at this level. It just shot right through it. So with that said, you can't put too much credence into the idea of like what Bitcoin can and cannot do. Like, can it not break through it? Can it? But my point, right, is if traditional markets come down, like they usually do during elections, and you see Bitcoin come down, it's still business as usual, right? I mean, we're still pretty far away from the 20-week moving average. Currently, we're like, I mean, the 20-week moving average is 18 to 19% down. If you go to the 20-week and go up, you can see that the price is currently like 25% above the 20-week moving average. So Bitcoin could drop by 10% at, say, go down to 12.3. Like let's say Bitcoin goes back down to 12.3. It could drop 10% and still be like $1,000 higher than the current 20-week moving average. Okay, so this is a good thing because it gives us some wiggle room, especially during a volatile time for traditional markets. And considering that, at least except for the last month, over the last year, there has been some correlation of Bitcoin to traditional markets. If you guys remember, back when Bitcoin was testing the 20-week in late August and early September, we said, right, that a significant drop in stocks could easily make it so that this does not hold. But stocks actually held up during that time, and in October, stocks actually didn't, they lost like a tiny bit, like less than 1%, I think, if you look at the whole month. Um, but during that time, Bitcoin rallied. So now that's a good thing. It gives us some wiggle room, especially if there's going to be upcoming volatility in traditional markets and people get spooked. Right? It gives us a lot of wiggle room because you can see how far above we are from the 20-week moving average. Now, with that said, too, remember that if Bitcoin starts moving sideways, either here or let's say it comes down a little and then moves sideways for a while, this would be great for altcoins. Okay, and you can, if you look at these price movements here, right, again, as we said, this took place over 84 days. This accumulation phase took place over approximately 84 days. Again, this was an altcoin paradise up here, really great for altcoins. If you want to see your favorite altcoins start to do well, then what you would most likely want to see, right, is for Bitcoin to just chill out for a little bit, right? I mean, if Bitcoin can just chill out at this level, I mean, just shy of 14K is a pretty bullish level for Bitcoin. This is very bullish, especially considering that the 20 week is all the way down at 11K. Now, if the 20 week were at 14K, then it wouldn't necessarily be that bullish because we're like, well, in order for the bull market to continue in the short term, we need to hold the 20 week. Therefore, it needs to put pressure on the price to move up. So it would be somewhat, people would be very cautious on altcoins. But since the 20-week moving average is like $2,600 below the current price, and the current price is only 13,688, then if this starts moving sideways, there's a good chance altcoins could pick up. And I mean, you know, Ethereum has had a good few hours, but this doesn't mean anything, right? I mean, like this simply does not mean anything yet. We on this channel, as you guys know, we're not interested in little zigzags that continue the trend down. What we're interested in are momentum shifts, right? This is a key momentum shift, right? And we would want to see this continue. And the only way this is going to continue, most likely, is if Bitcoin takes it slow here, takes it easy, says, okay, good rally, let's call it off for a little bit. Either we go back down to 12,000 or we sit humdrum at 13.5 or so and we move sideways. This would probably be great for altcoins. So, I think with that, let me know if you guys have any questions. Remember, you can join the Telegram channel. There's over 7,000 people in it. I'll go ahead and paste that into the comments. And also, if you guys like the content and want access to the premium list, you can check that out at intothecryptoverse.com. You get access to weekly reports, weekly videos, the alerts channel on Telegram, and the risk dashboard. And by the way, please subscribe to the channel if you're new here, right? Go ahead and subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. I'm trying to get to 50,000 subscribers. Help me get there if you guys find the content useful. And from here, I'm happy to answer questions. It looks like people are being pretty chatty, so we can talk about what's on your mind. Looks like a lot of talk about some politics, but I mean, given the title of the video, I'm sure there will be some. Make sure you guys give the video a thumbs up too. Let's at least get to 100 likes. If you guys have questions on Link, I would suggest I actually posted a couple videos on Link within the last week, so I would suggest you leave the live stream and go watch those videos, and you can see kind of my opinions on Link. Well, I'm curious to know what the chat thinks. Like, I wish there was a way to do like polls in the chat. I'm not sure if there is, but what do you guys think? Do you think Bitcoin will rally through 14K in November, or do you think we're either going, we're going to stay below 14K for November? Looks like we have some people. Oxygen says for him, it all depends on who wins. Remember, I mean, if you look at the markets, stock market, it's generally trended up. There's always been short-term volatility, but in general, it has trended up. You know, during all these different presidencies, right? Whether it was Republican or Democrat, for the most part it was trending upwards. But yeah, I mean, short-term volatility does exist, of course. And remember, during November, the price or the average S&P performance during the first day after, the first week after, and the first month after tends to be slightly negative on average. That doesn't mean every time it has been, just on average it tends to be slightly negative. Someone says, do you foresee a new depression? No, I don't. Someone says, please explain dollar cost averaging more in depth. I mean, it's just, I do it dynamically based on the risk levels, which again is part of the premium list. But the general idea is you just put money into the market. You don't try to time it. You just systematically move money into the market on a regimented schedule, so that over the long haul, you're generally just, you're accumulating an asset, right? You're not trying to like time the moves. And this is why on the channel I say, a lot of people understand DCAing their buys, but when it comes to DCAing their sells, it's kind of like a foreign concept, because everyone tries to time the top. Well, in the same way that you can't really time the bottom that accurately, why would you expect that you can time the top? And so that's why I say, in the same way that you think about DCAing your buys, you should think about DCAing your sells. Yeah, so the PayPal stuff, I see a lot of people talking about the PayPal stuff and saying, okay, well, what happens when, you can actually buy it and sell it using PayPal? This is one of those things where, it's almost like I mean, it's not exactly a rumor, right? I mean, we know it's happening, but it's kind of like a buy the rumor, kind of sell the news type thing if you prescribe to that type of stuff. Like, I wouldn't, like, it's too obvious for people to think that, oh, well, once this actually officially launches, the price has to go up. No, the price has already gone up, probably in lieu of that news. So you can argue the market has already priced that in. And a lot of times we don't talk about news on the channel because, as I said before, during bull markets, people just don't care about bad news, and during bear markets, people just don't care about good news, right? I mean, in a bear market, if you say anything, I mean, so in a bull market, you can say all the bad news you want. You know, it doesn't matter. Like, people just don't care. They just look to see, okay, what's the good news? Oh, PayPal's listing it. Oh, there's institutions buying it. They don't care about whatever bad news might be coming out. In a However, in a bear market, as I've said before, like, if someone just posts a picture of, like, I mean, like, if anyone just basically talks any negative sense about Bitcoin, like, the market's going to correct some. Like, I remember back in, if I mean, I'm curious if anyone else remembers this, because if you weren't there at the time, but do you guys, there was I think it was XRP when it happened, but, like, Coin Market Cap or something, like, recalculated how they were, um, like, how they did the price or something, and like, it showed, like, an instantaneous drop, and then therefore everyone, like, quickly then sold, like, the whole market, like, corrected back down because of that. It's just like little bits of bad news, no matter whether it's substantiated or not, right? Has the potential to just dump the market in the short term, right? Any exchange that goes down, no matter how important the exchange is, it just seems like every week the price is trending down. I remember back in 2018, like, it seemed like every Monday, um, you know, Bitcoin was just down 5 or 10%, right? For a lot of Mondays in a row, and it was usually accompanied by bad news. And it's not that the good news didn't exist, because there was still good news. It's just that people didn't care about it because the market was too propped up. It was too overloaded. It was time for it to come back down. And now is a great example of people probably just not caring about bad news. If this is the beginning of a multi-year bull market, there's going to be bad news that comes out, and people just aren't going to care about it. I mean, a great example. I mean, do you guys remember the article on Link a few months ago? And again, you guys, I know a lot. I don't generally talk about the news, but do you guys remember that article on Link that came out earlier in 2020, where there's a lot of, people creating a lot of fear in Link? And what did we say at the time? Remember, if you guys were watching the channel, we said, like, it's just noise, because any asset that's doing this well and is continuing to have such an amazing move like this, right? People are going to have various reasons to want to, put out bad news, whether it means they're shorting it, whether it means they want to claim some of that market share for themselves. There's going to be news articles that come out like that. But guess what? Link didn't care about it. I mean, I mean, look at it. It did not care about it. The only major move down that Link had, um, that was pretty much unpredictable, or, I mean, you could argue it was somewhat predictable given the pandemic, was in March. I mean, this move was entirely predictable, and if you follow the channel, especially the premium list, I mean, we said up at the top at 1850, I sold a lot of my Link because I said, okay, I think the top is nearly in. I didn't get the top, but I got pretty darn close. This one was more understandable. So again, even with that bad news that Link got, it really just didn't care, because the market conditions were primed for Link to move up. And so this is why I always say, right, the market just doesn't. I don't talk about news that often because, first of all, there's already a lot of other cryptocurrency channels that talk about the news, right? There's a ton of guys that talk about the news. You guys don't need another guy talking about the news. When I started my YouTube channel, I was like, okay, I want to create it on something unique, and that's why, I wanted to do more of this unique data insight analysis. By the way, I have a video that I'm going to be publishing probably in a few hours, and it's just your monthly update on the cryptocurrency market capitalization, right? The fair value of the cryptocurrency market capitalization. And just to give you a preview, right? I mean, you can see that over the last 2 years, as we've noted many times, we've generally just been tracking the fair value of the total cryptocurrency market cap. So currently it puts the trend line at 435 billion, and our actual current crypto market cap when I made this video was 395 billion, which means it was undervalued by approximately 9%. Okay, so just to give you an idea of where we are in the grand scheme of things. And I think it's more than likely that we continue to track this for a while before we go up into any type of, like, mania mode. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel again. Please subscribe, give the video a thumbs up. Huh. Someone says his grandparents are asking him how to buy Bitcoin. Well, generally speaking, when grandparents start asking, it's not a good sign for the short-term price movement. You guys have any more questions? Okay, so we have some questions. Someone says, is Ethereum, if Ethereum is bouncing off of its support now or soon, do you think it will continue upwards if Bitcoin drops down? I think there's a good chance as long as Bitcoin stays healthily above the 20-week moving average. Even if Bitcoin were to go to like 12K or 12.5, there probably would be a bleed in the short term for a lot of altcoins, but they can recover rather quickly if Bitcoin can move sideways, significantly above the 20-week moving average. So yeah, so I mean, if we look at the Ethereum chart, you can also see it's generally on track, right? If we add on the regression band for Ethereum, I mean, this is what we've been following for a while, right? I mean, this was a key accumulation phase, accumulation phase. Here was one, and then we've been in one recently. We're slightly outside of the accumulation phase. I mean, if anything, we're ahead of schedule, because according to this, the fair value of Ethereum right now is only 275. And the upper part of the regression band is 391. So Ethereum's doing quite well right now. So I think it is. I think it's completely on track. I can't tell you exactly if you should sell your positions or not. That's up to you. Again, as I said, I think, as I've always said, I don't know where the short-term price movements can go, and I don't trade short-term price movements. There's always a chance we continue to go on up. I think it's more likely that Bitcoin consolidates here for a while, at the very least. And I mean, even a consolidation down to 12K is still bullish. So. Yeah, I understand. I understand the hash rate dropped. I mean, you can easily. Um, I mean, this is obvious. I mean, we know the hash rate dropped. I mean, I'm not saying that. And by the way, it doesn't necessarily mean the price has to drop. There's a good chance that it will. I mean, I think there's a lot of things pointing to the fact that Bitcoin could drop back down in the short term, right? I mean, I think it's an entirely likely scenario that we come back down in the short term. I don't do a ton of on-chain analysis. I think the last time I did it was on the channel. I did it a couple months ago or so for Bitcoin. Um, but at the end of the day, even with the hash rate dropping, even with elections, if this is the beginning of a bull market, even a short-term correction back down is just going to be a blip on a multi-year run. Sorry, let me see if I think I missed a lot of questions. I know a lot of people get mad at me when I don't answer their questions, and it's just because I get so many of them. Do you think there are other institutions privately accumulating? I'm sure there's probably some institutions accumulating crypto. They just haven't advertised it. What altcoin do you expect to outperform Bitcoin and Ethereum during the coming bull run? It's hard to say. I mean, the majority of my portfolio is in Bitcoin and Ethereum. So if I say an altcoin and then it doesn't outperform them, to me it's really not that big of a deal because the majority of my portfolio is already in Bitcoin and Ethereum. But if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Chainlink to continue to do pretty well. ADA is another coin I like to follow on the channel as a hedge against Ethereum. Polkadot is another one. So those are the main three that I follow on the channel that are not Bitcoin and Ethereum. So Bitcoin, Ethereum, Link, ADA, and Polkadot. I live in the United States. Someone asked me what country I live in. Someone says, yeah, I mean, you guys know why I don't have super chats because, I mean, I'd rather just go invest the money. You don't need to tip me for it. A lot of people say like, why not Tezos? Remember, a lot of the altcoins, as I've said before, a lot of them bleed against Ethereum during times like these. ADA is just the one I choose. If you want to choose a different one, you can. But year to date, ADA has outperformed Tezos. I mean, if you look at the valuation of Tezos against Ethereum, it's a lot further down than ADA is against Ethereum year to date. Sorry, I don't talk about small cap coins on the channel because I don't want to give people the perception that I'm trying to influence the market in any way. A lot of the people that talk about, I'm not everyone, but if I talk about small cap coins, then it might give the impression that I was paid to talk about them, which I'm not because I don't do any paid promotions on the channel. I've never done a paid promotion. No referral links, no affiliate links, nothing like that. If I start talking about small cap coins, it might give the impression that I am, which I'm not, and I don't want to give the impression that I'm, getting paid in some random altcoin and then dumping on people after I promote it. Therefore, I just generally don't talk about small caps. Is my Can you guys tell me, it tells me that it says YouTube is not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming as such viewers will experience buffering. Is the stream still going strong or are we having some issues here? Nick Brown says, Ben, do you ever do analysis on crypto total market cap fair value trend lines? What do you mean? I mean, this was what I was showing earlier, right? I mean, this is the total currency market cap, and by the way, I've done this video like 5 or 6 times, and so the next one's going to come out like in a few hours. But you can generally see like the valuation versus the trend line, looking at these periods of undervaluation, and also looking at some similarities between 2012 and the present day. But I mean, it might be too optimistic to think it's going to play out exactly like that. I mean, we could see something else. I'm not going to go through every little slide here. I mean, it could look something like that, right? If it's an extended peak and seeing something like, something like that. So I do look at the total cryptocurrency market capitalization a lot. I publish a video on it once a month to the public channel, and it's usually around the 1st or 2nd of the month. Will I play chess today? I don't. Probably not. Yeah. So what do I consider small cap? I mean, so anything like if you look at like the general chart, right? Of let's say, let me just pull it up really quick. So if we look at like CoinGecko, for instance, I mean, like if you're looking at like the market capitalization, um, anything, I think generally if you're talking about like large cap coins, I would say anything over a billion, right? Anything with a market cap over a billion, I would consider a large cap. So that would take you all the way down to approximately 25, which is generally what I think of. Like, so I generally won't have any issues talking about coins in the top 25. And you can see, I mean, I mean, I've talked about Cosmos a little bit, maybe a little bit more on the premium stuff. I've talked a little bit about Tezos, a little bit about Monero, not, I mean, a little, Cardano. So we've talked about Litecoin, talked about Chainlink, talked about XRP. Obviously, not all of them. If it's between 100 million and a billion, I would consider it a medium cap. And this would take us pretty far down. If you go all the way down to 100 million, so it takes you from 88. So at present day, a medium cap coin is basically the cryptocurrencies between 25 and 88 because it takes you all the way down to about 100 million. So at 100 million, it looks like that one's band protocol, and then some other ones as we go up. I mean, some of them might look, I mean, DCR is one. I mean, I know people talk about Ampleforth a lot. Kyber Network, Ocean Protocol is a popular one people like to talk about. ICX. I know a lot of you guys are interested in ICX and Algorand. I know this is another popular one because I've polled people and figured out what you guys like. I've seen Ren pop up a lot. I've seen Digibyte pop up a lot. The basic attention token. Waves, Dogecoin. I know Yearn Finance is definitely I mean, at least a few months ago, was the flavor of the week, flavor of the month, if you want to call it that. Compound is another one, medium cap. Let's see what else. Maker is another decent one. Uniswap, so Uniswap governance token is another one. It's probably a Celsius network. It's currently at 141. These are all ones I'm pretty familiar with. Theta Network, and a lot of you guys like that one. Dash, VeChain, of course. Yeah, so I mean, so generally a large cap, I would say above a billion. Medium cap between 100 million to a billion. Small cap, I would say between 10 million to 100 million. So if it's a small cap, for me, generally it's from 10 million to 100 million. And you can see that, so if you look at the market cap, to get to 10 million, we actually have to go back pretty far. And these I would consider small caps. Okay? So anything between, say, 10 million to 100 million, I would generally consider to be a small cap. So let's see, where does 10 million get us? So it takes us all the way out to 353 or so, and whatever this is. These loyalty points, Dragon Chain. So we're looking at this region. So anything between 88 and 353, the current valuations would be a small cap as far as I'm concerned. And then anything below 10 million, I would consider a micro cap. So if it's below a 10 million market capitalization, I would consider it to be a micro cap. So any of these are as far as I'm concerned, a micro cap. So hopefully that answers your question. Generally speaking, talking about the top 25 or so, you can see it's above a billion. These are all large caps. It's fine. Once you get into the small caps and micro caps, it's a little bit too pumpy and dumpy for me, I think. At least, I'm not saying the projects are bad, I'm just saying the idea that I would promote them on the channel could be misconstrued. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up if you guys like the content. Help me get to 50,000 subs. Someone says throw 10 Ethereum into 10 small or micro caps and one will 100x. I mean, the issue though with that idea is if you throw 10 Ethereum, so just bear with me for this thought process, okay, before you tell people to go do that. So if you have 10 Ethereum and you throw, say, 1 Ethereum into, say, 10 different microcaps, and one of them 100x's and the others go to 0, that means you would have turned that 1 Ethereum into 100 Ethereum, right? Well, not necessarily, because it depends on what the price of Ethereum did, but let's just say you put 1 Ethereum's around $400. So let's say that 1 Ethereum goes up 100x. That would put it at $40,000. So there's that option, right? Well, what if you had just put all 10 Ethereum and just left it in Ethereum? Then Ethereum at that price, so you would say have $4,000 of Ethereum. Then a 10x in Ethereum would put you at 40K as well. So yeah, maybe one of the 10 coins does really well, but if the other 9 go to 0, then there's that opportunity cost of just not having put all of it into just Ethereum in the first place. Now, yes, there's certain projects out there that if you really like and you think that there's a good chance they're going to go up, I'm not saying you shouldn't invest. This is not financial advice. The point is, there's some YouTubers out there, and you guys might know, some of these people that I'm talking about. They'll just tell you to go buy random altcoins and don't even worry about what they were, right? Ask questions later. I'm here to say, like, this is a terrible thing to do in general. I mean, it's just gambling. Like, literally, if people are telling you to do that, they're just essentially like promoting gambling to you. So if there's a specific coin that you want to make like an educated guess on, like you want to make an investment on it because you think there's a good chance it's going to go up, it's fine. But in my opinion, taking like say 10 Ethereum and taking one, like and then just investing 1 Ethereum into say like 10 different projects or something and hoping one of them does well, like a lot of times you probably would have just been better off putting it into like some of the top projects in the first place because of the opportunity cost of the ones that were just go to 0. So just be careful. I'm not saying you can't have your pet project here or there, but having like 20 of them or something can get a little bit ridiculous. Yeah, I understand that you guys you might want super chat, but I have no intention of the YouTube channel is not monetized, right? I don't have AdSense enabled, I don't have super chats on, and I don't have any affiliate links or paid promotions, right? So I'm not gonna start doing that right now. I'm not gonna promise that I'm never going to do it. I really don't think I would, but I mean in 10 years I have no idea what I'm gonna be doing. But let's just say, I mean, for the foreseeable future, I have no intentions of turning on any of these features because I just think they're a distraction, and I'd rather you not throw your money away on super chats, to be completely honest. I feel like it's just a waste of money to be like, I think it's a waste of money. Yeah, flaming fire racing. Nothing is monetized. The only thing that I do right is the premium list. Right, this is the only thing I have. So if you guys really want to, you really want to join, you can join that. But other than that, no monetization going on. I don't talk about margin trading on the channel. No. Five Eyes says, would it be a good idea to weight your portfolio by market cap cubed? Um, this would be quite the weighting. Actually, it's interesting you ask that. If you go to my channel and search like portfolio, like if you just search like keyword like portfolio, I think I put out a video about a year ago that investigated had you put like if you had invested $1,000 in the top 10 coins back in 2015, like what would have been the best portfolio allocation. And I think I actually investigated like market cap squared, market cap cubed, the square root of market cap, the logarithmic of market cap. So if you're interested, you should go watch that video. I don't remember the title, but just go to my channel and just search for like portfolio or something. I'm not gonna stay online till the election results. No, I'm not. Someone says they're new to cryptocurrency investing. What should I look for? Um, so generally, if you're new, I would say the key thing to watch is Bitcoin. Bitcoin controls the market, and you generally want to see Bitcoin above the 20-week moving average for altcoins to have a chance to rally against Bitcoin. If you see Bitcoin well above the 20-week and moving sideways, this is good for altcoins. But if Bitcoin continues to just rally week over week, right, this is not good for altcoins because the market will sit in silence and watch what Bitcoin does. So that's just to give you a pretty quick breakdown. So if you're new and you think like and you could go throw a lot of money on a random altcoin, just recognize that if Bitcoin volatility continues to the upside or if it comes down sharply, those altcoins will likely bleed against Bitcoin. The Goldilocks zone is when Bitcoin moves sideways for a while. That's where altcoins can do the best. Above the 20-week moving average. Roof Monkey, yeah, weighting your cryptocurrency portfolio, lessons from the last market cycle is the title, I think. Yeah, that sounds about right. Yes, I do stake on. I don't know if I'm currently doing it. I don't think I'm currently doing it, but in the past I have staked on Uniswap liquidity pools. Someone says, please consider answering my question on ADA. I'm not sure what question it is. How do you populate the 20 week? You have to click on the settings, and if it's on a weekly time frame, you put it on 20 week. If you're on a daily time frame, you have to put it on 140 days, 140 days. Like, let me just show you. If I were to switch this over to days, this is no longer the 20-week moving average. This is the 20-day moving average. So if I want to switch it to the 20-week moving average on the daily time frame, I have to change this to 140. So it's 140 days or 20 weeks. So that way you can see it. what is the mathematical equation to plot a logarithmic regression curve? I mean, you can just do it with like, I mean, if you're doing it on, it depends on the asset, right? I mean, the general equation is just like A times ln of x minus b. That's the general equation. But if you're doing it like if it's like an asset that's already plotted on a logarithmic scale, then you have to manipulate it by doing like 10 raised to that regression equation. Okay, so his question is, last bull cycle ADA did 10,000 sats without a wallet. This time around, do you see a repeat or all-time high with Shelly? Yeah, I mean, I think there's a good chance it'll go to a new all-time high at the peak of the bull market. I think there's a good chance it will. But I think there's a lot of coins out there that will not make it to their prior all-time high. Should one learn to take profits on the next run, or better to hodl long term and not get wrecked? Um, your question seems somewhat like contradictory, because you're saying, should one take profits? I think one should take profits, but you're saying, what, or should you hodl long term and not get wrecked? I think if you only ever hold, you will get wrecked, because you will watch your valuation go up and then likely come back down significantly. So this whole channel is built on never letting never letting a good bubble go to waste, right? And always taking profits during any speculative bubble. Jimson says, so close to getting into that full coin club for Bitcoin and 32 Ethereum club for Ethereum. That's great. Congratulations. Someone says they held XRP for 3 years and it's done nothing for them. I actually just put out a video on XRP if you want to go check it out. Basically, the idea is it probably will continue to not do a whole lot over the macro scale until Bitcoin gets to its prior all-time high. That's the short answer. But if you want to go watch a 20-minute video on it, you can go check one out that I published a few days ago. You're asking for Chainlink analysis. I just published a couple videos on it like within the last week or so, so just go watch those. No, sorry. with regards to Chainlink, I don't really prescribe to the triangle stuff that much. Um, what's the highest, lowest price you bought Bitcoin? Um, That's an interesting question. I mean, the highest price would probably be. Um, Let me think for a second because it was actually pretty recently before this last pump. Um, the highest price is probably around 12,000, and that was a few weeks ago before it pumped up. So the highest price that I've probably bought Bitcoin was at around 12,000 because I didn't buy it. I didn't buy it over here. I know I did not buy Bitcoin at 12,000 back in 2017. Because at this point it was way too. I did sell some. I don't think I sold any at 12,000. I sold some at like 10,000 and 14,000 and a little bit higher, but I didn't sell any at or I didn't. I know I didn't sell or buy at 12. But so I would say the highest I've ever bought Bitcoin at 12 was at 12 was right over here. I did not buy it at 12 over here because the risk of Bitcoin at 12,000 back in 2019 was actually like between zero point 0.6 and zero point 0.7. So I don't buy it when the risk is that high. But over here, the risk was lower at the same price because it had continued to slowly move up. So the highest is probably around 12,000. The lowest, I mean, it's been a long time. I mean, I don't know exactly what the price was, but it was. I mean, I first got into crypto back in 2011, but I didn't buy any in 2011, so I don't want to give you the idea that I bought. I first learned about Bitcoin back over here because I was taking a cryptography course at the time in undergrad. My undergrad was in mathematics, so I took a cryptography course, learned about Bitcoin. I watched this happen. I was not invested during this right here. So again, I don't want to give people the impression that I was. But I know I was buying some like in this region over here. I mean, I definitely remember this 2013 bear market for sure, or 2013 run up, 2014 bear market. But even here, I still wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to play the market, right? I mean, I still got. I mean, I made some money, right? But I still got somewhat burned. Um, Definitely this last cycle though, I had a strategy and I stuck to it and it worked out pretty well. So this cycle was kind of just me like observing. Um, this cycle here was, kind of like not observing, being like an active market participant, but not really, you know, kind of thinking it could go a lot higher, right, than it did. I did sell some, but not nearly enough. Um, and then this cycle was a lot better. So so now I'm just trying to repeat this strategy, this cycle, but with a YouTube channel. So. Yeah, I mean, buying Bitcoin at 1 to 200 is great. I mean, you could argue though that buying Ethereum a few weeks or a few months ago at less than 100 was great too. And I said this back then, right? I said this is insanely low for Ethereum. Um, and people always look back and say, "What if?" Well, I mean, you could have bought Ethereum for less than $100 not that long ago, and it already almost went up to $500 in the short term. It went to like 475 before it pulled back a little bit. So just don't worry about the past. Just focus on the future. Well, it looks like I'm getting pretty tired. I think I'm gonna wrap it up here, guys. Remember, we do have the Telegram channel, so check that out if you guys. We have almost 7,100 people, so if you want to join, You can join the Telegram channel. We also have the premium list if you want to check it out. I'll just link it again. But yeah, I'm sure we'll do some more. Maybe we'll do some more live streams this week if there is a lot of volatility. And I think there's a good chance there will be some volatility. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, check out the Telegram channel in the description below, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.